and welcome back to Mixed Media. We are finally back for another week of Mixed Media. It feels like it's been like a billion years. How many weeks has it been? Like maybe 3 weeks?
I think it was the week before Christmas.
Yeah. So it's been a while since we've been on the show, and hopefully you guys will be happy that we're back. This is a live show that happens every Monday, usually at, well, depends on the time that we're streaming. Check out our Discord, check out our streaming list if you want to know when we're streaming next, because it might be changing soon, back to 9:30 or staying 7:30. Who knows? It doesn't seem to really matter terribly much. So if you have a strong preference, let us know in the comments. So I forget how to do the intro to the show. Wow, it's been that long. So I guess we'll introduce ourselves. So my name is Irving Nestor. I'm a filmmaker and media entrepreneur. I own a company called Ariella, based out of Mount Carmel, Pennsylvania.
Hi, I'm Ben Costello. I'm a flute player and a media composer living in Los Angeles. I guess I should add that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Nathan's the third one who's usually with us. He's usually talking about gaming stuff and some other random stuff. And right now he is, well, I actually don't know where he is. He's going to be back soon for the show, hopefully. And we'll catch up with him when he comes back on. But yes, what I normally do is I talk about what the show is about. So Mixed Media is a podcast that's streamed live. So if you're listening to this in post, definitely check out our live platforms on YouTube, on Rumble, and on Twitch. And what we do is we have live conversations, and hopefully the audience can be part of those conversations about our respective fields. It is a hodgepodge of anything art media related, hence Mixed Media, haha. And we come at it from our own sort of perspectives and whatever interests us in the moment. Really, there's nothing else more complicated than that, because there's not really a coherent structure other than that. And so I hope you enjoy this session of us just talk. Cool. All right. How was how were your last 3 weeks, Ben? The whole holiday session. Anything interesting?
Yeah. So, over the holidays itself, nice chance to relax with my family. As I was just telling you before we started the show a little bit, this past Saturday I had the privilege and honor of getting to play flute at the Intercollegiate Studio Orchestra as part of the Los Angeles Film Conducting Intensive or Institute. I can't remember if I is Institute or Intensive. So that was a really cool experience. Getting to play, second and principal flute at this this kind of unique program. Basically, what it is a bunch of taking a bunch of young, fairly successful, mostly still early career media composers who don't have a lot of experience conducting or any experience conducting in a major studio, and they have like a week-long kind of masterclass sort of thing with some of the best film and session conductors in Los Angeles. And they record some of their own music. They also just get a lot of lessons on how to operate in the studio system. And then they on Saturday of the week they this is a new thing that only the second time they've done this. They had a bunch of college students apply to play for them and kind of be their guinea pigs in the studio. So it was a really fantastic experience for me, playing at the Eastwood scoring stage and the Warner Brothers studios. Getting to interact with some really fantastic, very big names in the industry, and also some of these young composers who are hoping to be the next generation, and just seeing what really happens in like the major studios, not just in like smaller level studios. It's stuff you really can't replicate. Like when you're sitting on this massive stage, like how far away the flutes actually had to sit from
Mm,
everyone else because of like maximizing sound recording and minimizing interference. So how far away you have to sit, what height the stands are fixed at. So for lines of sight, things like that, you really can't replicate anywhere else. So really fantastic experience and a really great networking opportunity as well. I got to talk to and work with a lot of people. I hope to work with again someday.
that's pretty cool. Can you name any cool names, or is that secretive?
Well, names that people who were like running the institute. Um, Conrad Pope was kind of the head of it, and so Conrad Pope is one of the biggest orchestrators in Hollywood. Um, at this point in his career, earlier in John Williams' life, he had some other orchestrators, like William Ross in particular. But over the past, I don't know, 25, maybe 30 years, Conrad Pope has been his orchestrator, and obviously working with a number of other people, and also has conducted a lot of Williams stuff when Williams can't conduct in the studio.
Right.
So, you know, Conrad Pope.
You're like
Um,
just 1 degree separation. That's crazy.
yeah, yeah. I think the coolest moment for me was we were playing some extras from Star Wars. I was playing first flute on that, and we were playing Leia's theme, which has really huge flute solo in it. And the guy, the well, what we did it a couple times, but one of the guys who's conducting it, is a young composer who actually is on the team that this work did the music for the Lego Star Wars movies, which okay, relatively these are not massive Star Wars projects, right?
Hmm.
If you're a Star Wars fan and they are out there on Disney Plus, mostly I think for laughs.
Yeah.
They're not like canon Star Wars. Um, but this is like a guy my age who's like has works on those films on the team that did that is additional music composer. And he's conducting me on this actual John Williams Star Wars with Conrad Pope stopping him and like commenting on how he should be handling me as like flute soloist. So that was really cool.
That's so cool. That's unreal.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. Anything else like interesting during the winter break, or
Um. No, I think that was kind of the main thing for me. Kind of hearing about that and getting prepared to do that. So.
yeah, very, very cool. Yeah, for me, let's see. So I was in Florida for, well, what was supposed to be 2 weeks, um, for visiting my in-laws, who live in Florida, and yeah, was there for Christmas and New Year's, and ended up being there for a little bit longer because my flight got spontaneously canceled. Um, as I go through the TSA, I see the board switch to flight canceled. So that was very fun. um, and so ended up spending an extra 2 or 3 days there because the next flight to my original airport was in 2 or 3 days. So that was a bit of a nightmare because I had a whole bunch of business stuff lined up, and I honestly was nerve wracked. So um,
Uh, was
'cause
that a result of like the FAA like outage or
I mean I know vaguely what you're talking about, but I have
okay?
no
Because
idea whether it's related or not.
because that was the day that I flew back here, and that created a ton of problems for me
Uh,
personally. But I noticed for like all of the airlines, that was a very chaotic day trying to fly on that.
oh man. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's actually related to that. It was actually related to that. I got no reason. Uh, but they're like, hey, you could either, get the money back from your flight and then just buy a new flight, or just, you can get a free ticket for the next Frontier flight. And if you ever tried to buy same day flights at any airline, it is exorbitantly expensive. Like $2,000. Like that's not going to happen. So ended up having to wait it out in Florida, which I mean, I guess it was okay. But actually, I'm heat averse. It's gotten worse over the years. Honestly, I don't really like hot. But fortunately, for like half the trip, it was like abnormally cold in Florida, so that wasn't too bad. Um, so yeah, it was pretty fun. Anything else that happened? There's exciting stuff happening with my company and my YouTube channel. So if you're interested in any of that, look up Ariella. That's Auriela on YouTube. Sub to my channel there. There'll be some cool stuff happening. I'm talking to some awesome people, getting some awesome ideas together. So I'm super stoked for 2023. So it's looking better, looking a little bit better. But that's pretty much it. Nothing too crazy other than that. Any interesting headlines or anything that you've noticed?
Well, I guess the unavoidable one is the news from yesterday, where I actually can't remember what the specific event was, but it was kind of like a dual interview with Spielberg and John Williams, and I don't know, I don't remember who was interviewing them, but in this interview, the interviewer asked John Williams about, well, you got one film left, right? He said he was going to be retiring after, was it Jurassic Park, whatever number it is? I don't know. Five? Is that what they're on? And John Williams, instead of giving his answer, but he's been giving in the last few years, that I'm going to be retiring. He says, no, the best decade of one's life is 90 to 100, and how can I stop writing music? And Spielberg's like, what? I didn't know you're going to write more music after this. Now I have to come up with something new to film. So that's kind of like the headline in the media and music world, that John Williams is now saying that he's not going to retire. So,
well, actually, my bigger question here is Spielberg is directing the next Jurassic World. Is that?
I think you know what, I imagine he is, because I think that was the whole point, that he wants to finish his collaborations with Spielberg. Obviously, I think interviews focusing on the Fablemans, right, and that collaboration, which obviously Williams scored. I think Spielberg is doing the next Jurassic entry.
Yeah. No, I'm just surprised because he didn't direct the last two. Well, I mean, if he had, it would have been complete stinkers on his record. But maybe he'll save the franchise. I definitely have more faith in him than whatever nonsense is going on in Universal over that franchise right now. So.
And I didn't see all of it, but it sounded like it was a really interesting interview. I read some of the highlights from it. There was some really interesting stuff about their early collaborations together. I guess the original reaction, Spielberg's reaction when John Williams played the music, obviously on piano, right? Back in the 70s. Well, I guess John Williams is always playing stuff on the piano. He doesn't use technological audio mock-ups to demonstrate things like everybody else has to. But Spielberg's reaction when he first played the theme for Jaws, and John Williams' reaction when he first saw the footage for Jaws. Some interesting stuff there. Yeah,
I'll have to check that out. I'll definitely have to check that out. Sweet. Any other news or?
I'm sure there was something else over the past 3 weeks, but I cannot. I feel like there was something else, but I noticed, but I can't remember what it was. So
yeah,
we'll settle with just the non-retirement of John Williams.
Cool. Yeah, for me on the film side of things, I forgot to do this, but I was supposed to do. I typically do for major releases or releases important to me, look up the box numbers and stuff like this, but I forgot to do it for Avatar 2. And so that came out. I have not seen it yet. I was supposed to see it while in Florida, but things happened and I didn't end up seeing it. But I will see it in the theater probably relatively soon. So probably gonna have thoughts on that relatively soon as well on the podcast. And then the only other piece of news that I really noticed was this huge thing around James Gunn taking over the DCU. And I mean, in general, I'm kind of tired of superhero talk, but so I mean, in a sense, like this is kind of lower tier in my mind. But the interesting thing about it is sort of the corporate dynamics involved here to me. So James Gunn, famous for working in the MCU, right? Universal was it's Universal, right? Yeah, Universal was not happy with the way that the DCU was going. I think they're stupid. I think they're really stupid because they literally were just getting on the ball. Like they had two solid releases, recently. Not solid, like hit releases. You had the Batman with the vampire as Batman. I don't know why that's the first thing that came to mind. Robert Pattinson as Batman. And you have the Joker, both of which grossed immensely, both of which had a lot of what I call I don't know, making this up on the fly, but just like nice integrated fan base in the sense that both of them had a nice ratio of critics who loved those movies, and a nice ratio of audience members who loved them. So you had a nice thing going where these movies had critical acclaim and they had audience acclaim. Everyone was happy, basically, is what I'm saying. And I've seen both of them, and they're both fantastic movies. And they decide, actually, those movies did really well, but they didn't do Black Panther well. So what we've got to do is we've got to fire everyone and revamp the whole thing all over again. And this is like the third or fourth time this has happened to the DCU. I love DC characters. I feel so bad for what's going on here. There's some great actors involved in the DCU right now. They're getting fired left and right. Ben Affleck as Batman is rumored to be fired. Probably is fired. What's his face as Superman is fired. And what we don't know is what's happening to the standalone movies, which everyone is terrified, which is Joker and the Batman are both standalone in the sense that they don't actually integrate into the DCU. They're their own things, right? Even if they are making, multiple, iterations of those movies, they're their own pocket universes, which I think is the way to go, by the way, for forever. But the fear is that James Gunn will want to take those characters and unite them. I cannot imagine for the life of me how the Joker could possibly integrate in a DCU more than anything. That makes no sense to me on any level. I can't imagine.
But if you don't integrate them, how are you possibly going to get people to come back and they need to watch every, the next 200 films?
Well, that's what they're thinking.
Exactly. It's the MCU model, right? Like you. It's funny actually. Over the break, my sister was watching a lot of the MCU movies with her boyfriend,
mm-hmm.
and my dad. At one point, he's sitting there on the couch, and I think they had just finished watching a movie, and he puts on football, and some commercial for something MCU comes up, and my dad, he's just sitting there reading a newspaper. He never comments on anything, especially in a commercial during a football game. He says, I used to think some of these super movies were kind of cool, but then they made a switch. Even if you want to watch the next one, you have to watch the 50 in a row to get to it. And I'm not going. I don't like them that much. I'm like wow. I agree, but I'm like, I've never. If my dad is saying that,
yeah. The hype for MCU stuff has definitely died down quite intensely. It's now sort of like a micro fan, micro fan base because it's not small, but it's very insular. Because you really do have to commit to so much to understanding the next phase. I had my brother-in-law actually explain the whole thing to me, which I had no idea half of what was going on in the MCU, and I'm like, if I have no idea what's going on in the MCU, I can't imagine. Can't imagine, you know, what someone might be feel trying to watch like some random, you know, Disney Plus MCU related show, or watching the next like, you know, crossover movie. It'd be so confusing. I think the Doctor Strange movie, that was a critique that I didn't know was there until he was talking to me about it. But like a big critique with that film was that there's just so much background needed, and it's so integrated that if you miss this one episode of this random show, like, you know what I mean? Like, this moment didn't hit, you know, the way it should, you know? And honestly, that's because cinema is not TV, people. It's not TV. It's not... The way you consume a movie is completely different than the way you consume a TV show. If you tried to write a TV show the way you did the MCU, it would probably work a lot better. It would be nice and serial. Everyone would know exactly what shows to watch to get to the point. Like, it would just be sequential. You know, you just have a nice running TV show. The way they've done this whole shebang, this is kind of bound to happen. And I predicted way back when Endgame came out that that was going to be practically the end of the hype for the MCU for a lot of different reasons. And this is definitely one of those. But yeah, it's it's interesting. But hopefully DCU doesn't try to do the same thing. Please no. Like, we already have such little diversity of content. We don't need another MCU clone universe.
I will say that, like, I haven't watched a ton of MCU films.
Yeah.
And I never watched any of the shows. But I will say that, like, the films that I've seen that I think are, like, out of the ones that I've seen, there's some that are not very good. Captain America, Thor Ragnarok, or at least I watched the second half of that. But the ones that I've seen that, like, are decent, like Black Panther or Black Widow, yeah, I'm sure they do tie into like the broader. Oh, Iron Man is not very good. It's okay, but like Black Panther and Black Widow, like you can watch them without knowing anything about the MCU, and they're still like totally watchable films.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it seems as though this next phase is a huge departure from that sort of style. I mean, I don't know where they go up from here. I mean, they had a universe ending, half of people dying, multiverse time travel, bonanza. I mean, I guess the only way you can go up from here is just making it more complicated. I don't know. So, I don't even believe that this is the last phase. Like, I mean, I think they'll be like, actually, there's like 4 more phases because the cash cow can't stop. So, we'll see. This era has been extremely exhausting to me, so I'm kind of done with it. Okay, so Stephanie Costello says in the chat, Gina Lala. Oh, I'm gonna say that wrong. Lala Brigida. Yes, I think I did that right. Died, the last icon of Italian cinema, and so I just did a quick search on her, and yeah, she was born in 1927 in Subiaco, Italy, and she's done a lot of stuff. Very prolific. So I've never heard of her before, but there's some more news. Okay, and rest in peace, of course. Yeah, that's it for our opening segment, I think. Yeah. So that was our opening segment on news and what's going on in our personal lives. If you enjoyed this segment, please hit the thumbs up button or whatever equivalent thing on whatever platform you're on. You know what I'm kind of sad about? Rumble changed their symbol for the positive affirmation from a plus sign, which you called a rumble, to just a like button. Like, that's kind of boring, but that's okay. And yeah, if you enjoy this podcast, you'll definitely enjoy many more. So check out the whole series is wherever they are. Yeah, so without further ado, we'll go over to my segment, which will be about everything, everywhere, all at once. I have a lot of thoughts. Well, not a lot of thoughts. It'll probably be relatively short. But I'll be talking about the story structure and some of the talk around the film. And yeah, we'll get into it. So if you want to see that, you got to check that out. All right. And here we go.
Mixed Media Movies.
And welcome back to Mixed Media. I am reintroducing ourselves because this is a whole nother segment of the show, even though we've already been streaming for a good bit now. So if you want to see the other segments of the show, definitely check down in the description below. Wherever you are, you'll find links to everything you could possibly need. But first, we'll reintroduce ourselves again. My name is Irving Nestor. I'm a filmmaker and media entrepreneur. I own a company called Ariella out of Mount Carmel, Pennsylvania.
And I'm Ben Costello. I'm a flute player and media composer in Los Angeles.
Awesome. Yes. And basically what we do every week is we talk about film, media, music, gaming, and probably everything in between. So if you are interested in any of those really broad topics, there is a high likelihood that there's something that might appeal to you in our catalog. Just go check that out. Okay. So today we've got a very, very impactful movie to talk about. Ever since this movie came out, and I'm talking about Everything Everywhere All at Once, came out recently. Ever since this movie came out, there was a huge amount of talk about it, at least in the circles that I pay attention to. So a lot of film junkies, filmmakers, etc., were really on the ball with promoting this film as just a great edition. A lot of people were talking about it as an instant classic. And so the way they talked about it, I can kind of parse the difference between like overhype sometimes and like, oh, we actually probably have something interesting here. This is one of those where I kind of felt like there's probably something interesting here. So I made it a high priority to watch it. I watched it a few days ago. I'm back to watching movies frequently. It's very nice. I finally unpacked all my theater stuff. So I moved here a while ago, but unpacking is forever. So I finally got to watch it, and I have a lot of thoughts. This episode will mostly be about story structure, and if you want to check out like a very broad explanation about how you write for films, if you go to our catalog, you'll find a episode called Screenwriting 101. If you look that up, you'll find that episode, and I give a nice explanation about act structure and stuff like that. And that's the lens I will, for now, I guess until there's maybe a correction to the lens, but for now, that's the lens I sort of look at most of writing. So if you want to go check that out, I highly recommend it. Okay, so what is the hype about with Everything Everywhere All at Once? Well, when I was reading people's opinions, actually, Ben, have you seen it?
I have not.
Okay. The hype around this movie was all about how weird it is. So everyone was basically saying that this is the most genre-bending movie they've ever seen, the most weird movie they've ever seen, the most just weird. Like everyone was just saying, I can't explain it to what it's like to watch this movie. You just gotta watch it, right? That was like essentially what everyone was saying about it. And I was like, okay, a popular movie that's weird, that's awesome. I'd love to see it. And first of all, ahead of everything I'm about to say, I have to say this movie's fantastic. It's a fantastic film. I highly recommend it. It's, I think, a 4.5 out of 5 for me. Almost nothing I would change about it. Almost nothing. I'm always going to nitpick, but I'm not going to be focusing on this episode as a critique. Just sort of like speaking at the hype for this film and kind of confused because I felt like I was a little misled. Because this film really isn't that weird. And I think this might be more of a case of maybe a lot of people who have forgotten some of the genre stuff that's happening in this movie, because even the genre isn't weird. The story structure isn't weird. The genre isn't weird. I actually found it to be quite a straightforward experience, a lovely experience because I really liked it. But honestly, not that complicated. But I think there might be something interesting about the film culture aspect of it as to why this sort of attitude toward this movie kind of happened. So, what is the genre of this? It's actually very simple. It's just a dramedy. That's what it is. It's a drama comedy. It's not actually that weird. The language for dramedies has been established for a long time. Genre, if you want to know like a good general definition of genre, it's basically just like a set of common language tools to speak with, right? So like, you expect certain types of, like, say, for example, in sci-fi, you expect techno jargon, or if not techno jargon, maybe real science or real tech or whatever. You expect some sort of like technicality to be part of the genre. That's what gives those films a common base and structure, is making the mechanisms of the plot and the movie centered around these rule sets, basically, right? So that's basically what sci-fi is like, and so on and so forth. This is a dramedy. It's about a family. It's about characters more than anything. So it's about family. Excuse me, a family who's going through a collective midlife crisis, practically. Well, the main character, the mom, who's in the thumbnail there, down there, she's going through her like massive midlife crisis, and sort of everyone else is it's kind of a psychotic look at what that kind of does to the whole family, right? So it's kind of like her midlife crisis through her lens as her family goes through this time period in their lives, which is great. So that's a drama kind of aspect. Drama is probably the broadest category out of them all, but that's very dramatic. And the comedy aspect of it is because it's also extraordinarily comedic. There's a lot of jokes in this movie. They're pretty funny. Like, I'm actually pretty hard to sell on comedy, generally speaking. I don't know why. I don't know. It's hard to make me laugh. So when a film makes me laugh, I'm really happy. So this movie made me laugh a lot of times. So good job on this movie. But it's very centered on the family aspect of it while also being funny. Now, the funny part is, I think, why people call it weird. Because this film, you could probably slap, if you really, really wanted to, you could probably slap a sci-fi label onto this movie. Because there's like a core plot mechanism that relies around, universe jumping, right? And it's wild and crazy because of the universe jumping. But like that doesn't actually change genre and structure. Like it doesn't at all. So like the weird visuals are weird visuals. They're funny because they're funny. Like it's not anything more complicated than, seeing weird stuff pop up on the screen and being like, that's hilarious, and laughing. Like, who thinks of this? That who thinks of this, sort of reaction to the whole thing is completely normal, but it doesn't make it weird in the sense that it's an abnormal film in any particular way. So, what is the structure? The structure of this film is to the T, down to the atom, a hero's journey. Like literally, like beat by beat, it's a hero's journey. That's not bad. We talked about a hero's journey many times on the show because hero's journeys are very, very common as a story structure, and that's not a bad thing. There are certain story structures, I'm repeating myself, but if you're new to the show, here's a rundown of my thoughts on story structures, commonalities, right? A lot of times we want to view originality as the thing that is the best thing about art. Not necessarily the case, in the sense that, we can borrow tools and language and structures from other things and just execute them really well and be extraordinarily successful, as this movie does. the hero's journey is one of those structures that is extraordinarily timeless. It is practically part of our DNA. You find stories literally from all of time that are heroes' journeys, and we love the heck out of them when they're done well. Now, you're not going to love it if an obvious, simple hero's journey, you watched it one time, it was okay, and then there's a clone. You might get a little tired of it, I get that, but something like this, which is a hero's journey that's completely different in terms of its overall aesthetic, its dramediness, that's more different than you typically would find in the average hero's journey, is going to be different from, I don't know, Star Wars, right?
Yeah, that was literally what I was going to say.
Yes. So you're not gonna notice the sameness as much if you went from watching Star Wars to watching this, as much as if you went from, I don't know, watching two very similar, hero's journey movies. So it's,
to be fair, like in its time, Star Wars was also it's the hero's journey, but it also, combines aspects of several different genres as well.
Yeah, this is true.
I don't think it's as obvious to us today as it probably was in 1977.
Yeah, that's fair. That's very fair. So that's what it is. Now, how is it a hero's journey? Because I think a few people will be like, "What do you mean hero's journey? The main character is not a But then you think about it a little bit, because the main character, the first scene that we get is, what is the first scene you get in the hero's journey? It is normal life, right? It's always the normal. It's always the everyday, the mundane, with all of its mundane problems, right? Typically in these scenes you typically get a mundane sort of issue that crops up, right? What is it in Star Wars? It's what it
Luke is on the farm, the Tatooine moisture farm, and he wants to go to the the space, like the flight academy, and his uncle says, "No, I need you to stick around here, help me out on the farm for another year, and you can maybe go next year." And but basically that's what happens.
Yes. So a little bit of conflict in the first act that is just the mundane. And what this does is it helps us to relate, right, to the character in the story. They are one of us. They have their daily issues and etc. For this mom of this family, this mundane sort of section of the movie, it's just her dealing with the fact that she owns a laundromat with her husband. Her husband wants to divorce her, and her child is kind of, she doesn't have the best relationship with her. They're not close, and and then issues with the laundromat. So we get like a crazy, frantic day, basically, in her life, at which she gets her call to action, which in Star Wars is takes the form of R2, right? Okay.
Well, yeah, so you're right. He gives the message, and then he goes off, and he says, the message from Leia says, give this to Ben Kenobi, right? And he goes off and finds Obi-Wan. Yeah.
Exactly. So in this movie, her husband is acting really strange, and it turns out that he's being randomly interrupted by a interdimensional version of her husband, meaning her husband from another dimension is randomly, and she thinks it's weird at first, of course, and it's played for jokes a lot. It's very funny. He's randomly being interrupted by someone who's him but not him, right? So he's more suave, than her husband, but has some of the core similar characteristics, right? We're gonna say something? Okay.
No, I'm just trying to imagine that.
Yeah.
What that would look like.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. So he turns out to be a interdimensional agent, essentially. And so he has a special mission for her. What does that sound like? That sounds like a call to action. It's very simple. And so she's taken out of the normal into a new world. In this case, it's not a new world, like in the sense that like she's not on another planet or like in a land far, far away or something like that. She's in a new world in the sense that she did not know that the world was composed of these multi-dimensional things, and so he has to introduce her to those concepts, right? Through which we get introduced to how this world works, right? So in Star Wars, this would be Obi-Wan basically, talking to Luke about everything. And then in the middle section is where you get the most variation between heroes' journeys, because there can be added or subtracted little beats here and there. I wish I had the image. I forgot to grab it, of the really complicated hero's journey wheel. But you can have things like the death of the master, you can have things like blah, blah, and you can kind of swap in and out these things depending on what your objective is, or you can have all of it. There are some stories that have all of it. But in our case, what we have is we have her having to learn to use her new power, which is being able to jump between dimensions, where, importantly, because this is a well-written movie, the mechanism allows her to experience different versions of herself had she made different decisions. So once I saw that in the movie, it's like, I know exactly what this movie's about. It's about a midlife crisis. Not a bad thing that I knew that it was still a great exploration of that concept. But it was rather obvious, I was like, okay, the mechanism here is what would have happened if I made different choices in my life. Okay, that's for theme. That's specifically for theme. It's a nice mechanism because it's both fun in the sense that we get to do crazy interdimensional stuff, and it's a nice thematic way to explore a theme about identity, like who am I, like where have I come in life, midlife crisis, particularly feminine one, which I really enjoyed, because we don't really see those very much. I can't think of another movie that's like about a female midlife crisis. But and
I'll be back 1 second. I'm gonna grab my charger. So.
Okay, no problem. And so what we get basically is her jumping through different realities to solve different emerging problems that are occurring with the plot. There are villains that are sort of being explored, like this IRS tax lady down in the thumbnail there. By the way, I love this film's take on the IRS. I think it's hilarious. I think an unintentionally funny comment this film makes is the IRS knows everything that you're doing, and so I know how to push your buttons, your ups and your downs. That's fantastic. But the problems in her life kind of start to collide with the problems that are happening in the sort of interdimensional space. We find out relatively early on, it's kind of a semi-spoiler, but we learn this relatively early, and turn off your ears right now. If actually, I had a fun little spoiler thing. Do I still have that? I forgot I had that thing. Let's see if I can find it. Oh. Okay, maybe not. Maybe I lost it. But, oh no, I found it! There it is. Oh wait, no, I'm not currently discussing Vertigo, but you get the idea. This is a spoiler.
To see how old that spoiler warning is.
Exactly. So spoiler warning. Turn off your ears for the duration of this tag being on the screen. The daughter turns out to be the main villain in this interdimensional universe. So the interdimensional version of her daughter in one of the universes gets supreme power over the multiverse, basically. Where she's so fractured in how many universes that she's occupying at one time that she basically simultaneously occupies all of them, which you're now starting to see where the movie title comes from. Everything, everywhere, all at once. And it's kind of crazy like that. Like, we're getting universes where people's hands are sausages. We're getting universes We're getting universes where the main character is a kung fu a master, and that leads to some great set pieces. By the way, some great choreography that reminds me that the kung fu era of cinema was really fun, and maybe we should get some of that back in some just fun movies. She's out of the tradition of Jackie Chan, literally. By the way, she's actually a stunt actress slash actress, kind of like Jackie Chan, same sort of tradition. She was, believe, mentored by Jackie Chan, and she's done many movies with him. So, and it shows, like, and she's like relatively, like, I mean, she's on the older side. She's like 60, I believe. So some of the stuff she's doing, I'm like, dang, that's awesome. You know, that's crazy. So seeing her do all her set pieces and stuff like that was super fun. But you get it. It's really weird in that sense. But it's all fun and hilarious. That's the point of the whole thing. It's almost like a psychotic break, right? In a sense, is this universe jumping stuff. And so her daughter, being the biggest villain, is kind of representing all of her failures in her life and representing them back to her. She's one big representation of nihilism, like straight up. Like when I don't mean that like in the abstract. I mean like literally Nietzschean. Like, you know, like literally, like I don't know. There might have been some Nietzsche quotes in there. I'm not sure. I'd have to look it up. But but also like over dramatic, like melodrama, you know, for the sake of keeping it fun still. And so the daughter in her depression, which is, you know, I would call it that's the state of her daughter at the beginning of the movie, a state of depression. Her daughter creates the void, the void. You know, like, and instead of it being the void, TM, it is actually the everything bagel, TM. It's really stupid, but she puts all of the universe on a bagel, hence an everything bagel. It's ridiculous. Because she was bored and fractured and whatever, and so that becomes a representation of the void, and her daughter serves as a sort of I guess like almost like, you know, serpentile type, you know, whispering into the ear of Eve type thing of like, look into the void, you know, like, yeah, to into this everything bagel. And you know, succumb to it. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, you know, kind of thing.
The pit of despair and mundanity.
Exactly. Like that. Exactly that. And we have a wonderful moment in the climax. And so what do all heroes' journeys have in common? All of them have to have this. It's that the main character has to have some sort of flaw, right? Or flaws. Could be flaws. But they have to get over some sort of something, some character issue, you know, typically. So in this film, it's this character's, it's kind of complicated, which is fun because you get to think about humans in a more complex way, right? It's not so simple as just saying, aha, it's just that she's not brave enough or something like that, right? It's more like her view of her life is way too myopic, right? So it's way too self-centered. Not in the obvious sense of like, you know, she just like forces everyone to do what she wants. That's not really what the selfishness on display really is. It's something more like losing self-criticality, right? Like not staying sharp on improving yourself, which is a surprisingly nice and nuanced, you know, little take to have on this character. It could have easily been a whole bunch of really simple and overtread sort of flaws, but in this case, she just doesn't. She's not attentive enough to her daughter, you know, in a way that's not just like I need to like go fishing with my daughter more or something. I don't know. I said that, but or something like that, right? It's more like something like I have not been truly interested in why my daughter is depressed. And the opposing side of that is that the daughter has, in this particular iteration of the hero's journey, which other hero's journeys also have. I actually think of the new Star Wars for this one with what's his face, the villain, Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren has this feature as well, which is that he also has a sort of dueling fatal flaw, if you get what I mean. And so her daughter also has a fatal flaw, which I really enjoyed about this as well, meaning that she's not just a victim or like, something too simple where it's just like, you were terrible to me and like, now I'm depressed and it's all your fault and now I created the everything bagel and we're all going to hell, or something like that. It's a little bit more complicated in the sense that the daughter also has a fatal flaw of also kind of being selfish in her own ways, right? So in her despair, it's actually really despair that's being attacked here, which is, this idea that she's done nothing to deserve any of this. There's no good in the world. Nothing means anything, right? And that act of looking into the void is the ultimate surrender into all of those ideas. And so she has to learn why she should look away, which is fantastic. Like, in a movie, honestly, I'm going to say it outright, I don't expect these things to appear in, like, really popular movies these days because they're, like, really nice, like, I don't know, like, the movie's not a family movie because there's a lot of inappropriate things in this movie. A lot. But in terms of its thematic presentation, I think one of the reasons people find this movie so refreshing is because they haven't seen moralizing in movies for so long. And that's so sad to me. Like, good moralizing, too. That's not as simple as, like, I don't know, he's learned to be more tenacious or... he's learned to be more, whatever, silly, something that relates to, like, I don't know, our careers or something like that. This is more, like, nice and personal and deep and interpersonal, and you can take it to your own life in a way that's deeper than just, wow, I don't, rise up the corporate ladder fast enough. Let me rise up faster. Like, something stupid like that. So, this is more... more wholesome in that way. So I think that's one of the attractive aspects of this movie. It reminds us of that more wholesome time of storytelling in general. And we need a lot more of it. So there comes a point where she has to rectify her fatal flaw. She has to be left alone, of course. The hero cannot ever be assisted in killing the dragon, so to speak, right? Because if the hero is assisted... Actually, I think I'm going to stop with spoilers now, so I'm going to pull this off. If the hero is assisted, then they have not truly owned their flaw. They haven't truly gotten over and owned it, right? So, for her, she has to experience fighting the villain all on her own. So her mentor, which in this case, her husband, right? Her husband from another dimension has to not be there anymore. And so she has to be left alone, knowing the few things she knows about this interdimensional fight to discern what is her true problem with the whole situation, that she cannot rise to overcome it. She starts trying to rise to overcome it in a brute force manner where she's just like, I was supposed to be amazing in my life, but now I just own a laundromat. And she's just like, here's my chance to prove that I'm amazing, right? Which could have been the flaw. Like we could have been something more simple and just been like, unrealized potential, she just needed to be whatever, Instead, that actually is the flaw, is that she thinks she just needs to be this. She just needs to get rid of her husband. She just needs to have not moved to the United States, or whatever it may be. This very self-centered sort of attitude. Instead of that theme, what we go for instead is her having to realize that that is the issue, is not her not appreciating who she has in her life, why she had them to begin with, why she got here to begin with, and all the sacrifices that she made, and then also that she has failed to grow as a human being. And that becomes the thing. So she has to grow in response. And in growing, she learns how to speak to her daughter, but she also learns how to speak to her husband. She also learns how to speak to herself in a lot of ways, and she learns how to deal with situations in a way that's not so self-absorbed. Making herself the victim is really the kind of thing she has to get over, right? Is making herself, a victim of endless circumstance in her own head and having self-pity. That's such a refreshing flaw to get over these days. So yeah, and then she completes that task. I won't spoil how. And there's a final slaying the dragon scene, which is really hilarious. It's really stupid. It's really dumb. And when I say dumb, it's really not a knock on it. It's just really silly, in a funny way. So we get a final fight scene, which is very well choreographed, very well filmed. And then we get the ending, which one of my biggest pet peeves with movies, as you know, if you've watched the podcast, is a denouement or a denouement at all. That concept sucks, in my opinion, but the idea that we should just like take when all the tension is released, now we have to tie up all the loose ends and and then let all the tension fade. It's like, bruh, the tension fades when they get their butt out of the seat. Like, that's when the tension fades, in my humble opinion. And that's where all the percolating happens in people's heads, is that release of tension. You don't want to have that to happen too much in useless scenes. You want that to happen nice and cerebrally after the movie ends. But so in this movie, we don't have a denouement that is too long, which I really appreciate. And so she has to return to the normal. This is always a hero's journey, the return to the normal. Interesting random thing that just came to mind. But like those typical Enlightenment democratic figure sort of stories, they're all hero's journey, right? Like George Washington, right? Like the way he's portrayed. It's literally just a hero's journey, his life story, right? And obviously there's parody between his life and the way it's sort of presented, but we've kind of sort of subconsciously clicked his life into a hero's journey sort of format. And so what we end up with is him going back home, right, to the fields where he's made his nation better, right? That's kind of sort of feeling that we get about George Washington. He goes home to take care of his cherry tree or whatever the thing is. In this movie, she has to go home to her family, deal with her everyday situations, which is absurd. That makes no sense from a realistic perspective, what would happen in this universe. She's still an interdimensional being. So it doesn't really make sense for her to go back home and live life as if it's normal. But that's what she does, because that's what the movie's always been about. It's always been a hero's journey. The fooling you part is that it was about the interdimensional stuff. Really, it's a hero's journey. So we have to put aside all that interdimensional stuff. She has to go home, and she has to make home better, right? And that's by being a better person. Her daughter's a better person. One extra tidbit from a thematic perspective, not a structural one, that I really enjoyed was that the daughter is at the climax of the movie. Oh, here, I have to put the spoiler warning back up. So this is a spoiler, but at the end of the film, it's not too big of a spoiler. Actually, nothing I said is too big of a spoiler. This movie's not about what happens; it's best just experienced. But the daughter at the end has basically a choice whether to, or her mom, it could defeat her with force, right? She could have just, through her newly realized understanding of life and her newly realized understanding of the common thread of the objective good, which fantastic writing. She could have wielded that common thread of the objective good to defeat the everything bagel absorbed daughter, and instead of it's sort of ending with basically her superheroing the problem away, if that makes sense, or even talking the problem away. It's neither kind of. It's an interesting area where she kind of superheroes her way to the end, and gets her to a point where she can talk to her, and lets her go. At which point I was kind of scared this movie was going to take a weird turn, but it didn't. Um, she lets her go and says, actually, it's up to you. And for those who understand, which is probably many more people than people think, what it's looked like to stare into that void and want to just jump in it. It is very important that no one can make you leave. And I really enjoyed that aspect of the whole thing. Meaning, she can go up to the point of making her argument that there is objective good, that life is worth living in an attractive way, right? That self-improvement is attractive, right? She can go all the way to the point to saying all those things, demonstrating all those things, and making the good attractive. But what she cannot do is use force to get her out of that situation, because at the end of the day, the problem is internal to her daughter, right? It's not something we cannot make other people, believe anything, definitely. We also cannot make any other people feel anything differently. So what she has to do is want to look away, right? Which is totally the experience of that sort of abject nihilism, right? It's like you can't. It's so far depraved in the nothing is truth sense that seeing the thread of truth, seeing the thread of goodness, is helpful. But if the person doesn't want it, there's nothing you can do about it. I really love that way that they did that. And so she has to make the decision after turning back to the everything bagel and wanting to go back to her self-consumed sort of, psychosis. She says, actually, my mom is beautiful, right? Like, in the attractive sense, like in the sort of abstract sense of beauty, right? My mom is beautiful. And that beckons to her in a way that that cannot be completely explained. And that's kind of the reality of life, right? Check out the episode on Transcendentals, by the way, if you want to explore those topics a little bit more. But I really liked that aspect of the writing. And so, in short, to wrap up my little segment here, fantastic movie. But as you see, when I stepped through the genre and the structure, not anything terribly complicated. I was kind of misled on that front. I'm not mad that I was misled. I'm happy I got to watch this movie because, one of the better movies I've watched in a while. There's some funny, interesting stuff in it. Stuff maybe I don't agree with being in there, but the overall goal that was set out in this film is realized and achieved basically as best as it possibly could. And that's the best compliment you can give something. Someone set out to do something, they achieved it. So, yeah. And if you want to know who the directors are, they are the Daniels. And they've made only one other feature film, which is Swiss Army Man, which is also a kind of like farcical movie, which I haven't seen yet, but there's a lot of fart jokes in the trailer, if I remember correctly. So, but also that movie was very well loved, and I can imagine them doing a very similar pattern of focusing on these very intricate, interpersonal, very nicely woven, overall moralized themes through this dramedy sort of genre format. They also did the music video for Turn Down for What. If you know what that music video is like, you'll know kind of why this movie is so so weird in its comedy. It's very out there, but it's very slapstick in a lot of ways. But yeah, so yeah, that's my presentation. Any thoughts, Ben?
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder though, like for Star Wars, I don't know if there's a return home. Is right?
Well, so
home gets burned down by the Empire, literally. And it ends. Well, the first movie ends like he gets his medal, right? Great, you're a hero. The last movie ends. They're just cheering on the victory of the rebellion.
I think the return home is somewhat implied in Star Wars. Like it's like kind of like, you know, well, now that Luke has become the Luke that he becomes by the end of it, you know, we're all safer now. He can bring back those traits to make a more balanced universe, you know. We don't
Okay.
see it. It's interesting because
In fact, we
in,
never see it because even when we get episode 7, like, oh, we have the New Republic, we're just gonna blow the New Republic up. We literally never see it.
yeah, exactly. I guess there's like an implied, like, you know, he brought back his what he learned, you know, becoming a Jedi, um, and then he taught other people is kind of, I guess, the new canonical like back to normal. But
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
even in the expanded universe, that's the whole goal. That he trains, he restores the Jedi Order, and Leia restores the Republic.
yeah,
But,
yeah,
yeah. Okay. Okay.
yeah. exactly. But yeah, also, I watched this on Showtime for free. There's a 7-day free trial there, so I didn't know Showtime. I don't know anything about platforms. They all bother me. So, yeah, I would recommend if you haven't done a Showtime trial, which I'm sure it's not that popular. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but if you haven't, go do it. 7 days, watch this movie, and there's also a lot of classic movies on there. So I'll be sort of binging those for the next 4 days. And yeah, that'll probably be a good thing. So that's all I have to say. And if you agree or disagree with anything I have to say, you think I'm stupid, that the story structure was this crazy novel thing, think that the genre bending was insane, like it's some sort of Tarantino movie or like some sort of like there's this recent movie that was super genre bending. I can't remember what it was, but you know, you think that stuff was insane, and you think that my 4.5 should be a 5 or something. You complain about the half-star doc or something like that. I don't know. You can go to our Discord. You can go to our Discord. Link is in description, and yell at me all you want. Just at me. I will probably respond within a day. So,
Have you ever given a film a 5?
yes, I have. I have like, I want to say 8 5s.
Okay.
Typically, the last half star, to be honest, in my sort of way of looking at it, is intensely personal. So it's like, if it's like perfect, but doesn't hit me in like the type of way that's like, you know, this is like personally affecting, it's probably not going to get a 5. So 4.5 is like a really good score. Like, you know, there are not that many 4.5s in my. Well, there are a lot more, but they're not an exorbitant amount of 4.5s in my film catalog either. So
Okay.
I have only good things to say about this movie, other than people are being weird about it. Yeah. Okay. So shout out to all the people watching on Rumble right now. You guys are awesome and fantastic. I love when the Rumble audience pulls through. What I would like from everyone watching is that if you enjoy this, please hit the thumbs up button. It really, really does help. I'm seeing people also on YouTube. That's fantastic. So yeah, I'm so glad that you're here on our return. It is hard to keep the content rolling, but we are doing it. So if you enjoy it, please hit the thumbs up button. We're going to move on to our next segment right now. I don't think Nathan is back yet. Oh, he said he might actually miss this one. Oh, okay. Well, that's sad. He was going to talk about YOMI Hustle or something. I don't know. A game. So maybe we'll talk about it next time. But what we're going to do right now is we're going to switch over to our Arguing with Reddit segment, where Ben will be talking about his hot takes about anything music related, pretty much. And let's see, and we'll go over to that right about now.
Mixed media music.
All right. Welcome to Mixed Media Music, the portion of Mixed Media Podcast where I and my co-host talk about all things related to music with a particular emphasis on film, TV music, video game music, and classical music. I am your host of this segment. I'm Ben Costello. I am a flute player and a media composer in Los Angeles. And 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 my co-host here, allow him to introduce himself.
Yes, so my name is Irving Nestor. I'm a filmmaker and media entrepreneur. I own a company called Ariella that is based out of Mount Carmel, Pennsylvania.
Yes, and our third co-host is not with us tonight. So yeah, and tonight we are doing Arguing with Reddit for mixed media music. And if you are unfamiliar with our show, what happens with Arguing with Reddit is my co-hosts or their representatives find controversial statements, hot takes, or interesting things or questions online, often from Reddit, but can be from other places, and they present them to me to respond to, get my instantaneous reaction without having prepared thoughts. Although I have one that I picked out for myself that I do know what I'm going to say, but otherwise I'm responding live.
Yes, sweet. And I think I actually lost my link to mine, so I'm trying to re-find it because I never posted in the group chat. So let me pull up yours first, and then we can go through that.
Okay. Let's see.
All right, you can go ahead.
All right. Well, I'm just going to read this. I found this one on our classical music, and I did write a response on here. I commented. Maybe my comment was not. I don't know. I'm going to kind of repeat what I said in my comment, but I'm going to see if I can say it in a slightly different way. So this person says, I want Shostakovich's pieces that are manic. It's a recommendation request. And the person continues, they want pieces that are absolutely derailed, pieces that show his suffering and paranoia under Stalin's regime. Something along the lines of his String Quartet No. 8. I have read a lot about his feelings under the Soviet Union. I would like to listen to those feelings now. Thanks. Okay. And some people give him some suggestions. Pretty much everybody says second movement of his 10th symphony. Okay. So people give him, some standard Shostakovich suggestions. And my response to this is a little bit different. So I think the person's asking for two different things. They want pieces that are kind of crazy and intense, right? Or in their words, manic and absolutely derailed. Okay. Well, that's somewhat subjective, but that's much easier to answer, I would say, using my subjective lens, of course. Although I think lots of people have as I said, a lot of the same suggestions. So a lot of people tend to feel similar way about, for instance, the second movement of Shostakovich's 10th Symphony. But the more difficult part is that the person adds they want pieces that show his suffering and paranoia under Stalin's regime. Okay. And the person says they've read about Shostakovich's feelings, and they want to listen to those feelings. And that is a much harder thing to answer. And what I wrote in my comment here is that, the real answer is everything and nothing at the same time. Because, it's very... How can I really claim that a piece shows suffering or paranoia? How can I claim that the piece is about... everything, right? To quote this, right? They want a piece that expresses his feelings under the Soviet Union. Well, that's everything, right? It's kind of like there's no separation really between. There's a separation between art and life, but it's very complicated, right? Everything that I write is influenced in some way by every part of my being.
Absolutely.
And the same is true of every artist, right? And you can't put your thumb on like, well, I chose this B flat instead of a B natural because I don't know, because the Congress passed this law on Tuesday, right? No, you're not going to do that, right? Even if you wanted to, you probably can't. But it's all there. I would imagine, and I pose this challenge in my comment. Right? Imagine if you're a composer, right? And like you probably, if using Reddit, you're probably younger, right? So you probably lived most, or not, if not all, of your life in like the post 9/11 world, or like the age of a smartphone, right? If you were a composer, right, and someone said, "Well, I want to, what are some like pieces of yours that express living in a post 9/11 world, or in the age of instant connection to the internet via smartphones?" I mean, it's everything, right? Maybe you have some things that are more explicitly about those things, but it's everything. It invades every aspect of your being and every aspect of your art, even if not in a conscious way. So again, I in some ways I think the answer is really everything, but almost nothing specifically. People, this is the real danger with Shostakovich, that people love to try and read things into his music, and I don't know that you can really. Sometimes you can try and find biological details, right? Like when he uses his own, the DSCH, and uses a particular rhythmic motif that accompanies that frequently, right? And like I'm interested in that kind of stuff. There are other biological things like in his 10th symphony, and really there's always this debate, right? Is the 10th symphony about the death of Stalin, right? Or was it actually written before the death of Stalin? And the only reason we really think that people like to say that it's about Stalin and the death of Stalin is because in Simon Volkov's kind of book that has been the reputation has been tarnished, right? His book Testimony, where he claims that interviewing Shostakovich says, "Oh, the second movement of my 10th symphony is about Stalin. It's a portrait of Stalin." All right, well, this is a really flawed source. Everyone who, Shostakovich's son, right? Lots of people, everyone who knew him was like, Shostakovich would never say such a thing, even if it were true, right? You can look up the whole controversy on the book Testimony if you really want to learn about Shostakovich and get into like the whole Cold War era politics around shaping his image, and in this way. We're not going to get into that. We've talked a little bit about it before. I think really this 10th symphony is much more about just him dealing with personal feelings, right? It's got all these like this obsessive use of his own, Dmitri Shostakovich DSCH, and his own rhythm, but also this quote, from Mahler's "Song of the Earth," which or kind of a transformed quote of it, but which also happens to be musically the name of one of his female students at the time. And it turns into like again this kind of battling between DSCH and this female student of his, and then it kind of turns into this grotesque wedding march, and it kind of collapses. I think it's much more interesting if you think about it on a personal biographical level than like, well, this is about stuffing under Stalin. Anyway, so I think it'd be really hard to point to something specifically that does do these things. So it's everything, but like nothing in particular. That's kind of my answer. But to the first part, if you want pieces that are just kind of crazy and it's just absolutely derailed, for an outside pick that I don't think anybody mentioned in the comments, the entire 6th symphony, but like you could just listen to the last 2 movements and they work, but they kind of are a little bit meaningless without the first movement, which is totally different and not in that manner at all. Very, very, very slow and like almost nothing happening. So the entire sixth symphony is a really fascinating journey. That's my pick for to answer this for you. That's my suggestion.
Cool. Very good. Very good discussion that got into the depths of being an artist. Cool. All right, so I actually found an extra one because Nathan's not here. So I pulled, this was not my original one, but I pulled it anyway. And this one is about the best overall music notation software. and that's pretty much the question. They mention Sibelius, Finale, Muse Score 4, and Notion 6 ON Dorico. I don't know if I'm saying
Yeah.
that. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's a lot more software than I expected to exist, but
yeah, there are actually many more programs that are. I can't think of, like, there's one program that is used by pretty much every engraver outside of the media music world, and you can't. It's not like it. You have to. It's like all on floppy disk. You have to run it in, like, I don't know, like Windows 90 something.
Okay.
And yes, but that is what is used for, and it's like very complicated. Like, you don't. It's not like you're not looking at it like a staff and like entering notes. You're like coding. You're like, and very few people know how to do it. And basically, the only people who do it, they learn how to do it in like early 1990s. And anyone who has done it since then has learned it from them. But that is the standard outside of the media music world. In the media music world, Sibelius and Finale. Some people are kind of starting to move to Dorico. The interesting thing is, yes, like maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, Muse Score 4 was released. I think we've talked about this once on the show before. How Muse Score. I think I actually was just like on our very last show. I think this might have been in my news segment about the release of Muse Score 4. Actually, I'm pretty sure that's what I know. I know I talked about it, and it just came out in like the end of December. So I feel like that was probably the news segment back in whatever our last show was. Yeah. Yeah. So they have substantially revamped it so that it's designed to be a competitor in every way to Sibelius and Finale, and also to Dorico, because it is their own version of Note Performer compatible now. So you can. It's really we don't need to get into the technical details. I haven't downloaded it yet, so I can't really answer that. I kind of want to and see what's going on with it. I know that some people have kind of complained about the sounds for some things, and like they found they liked it for other things. Apparently, it's not very good at jazz sounds and jazz articulations, but it's very good with strings, from what I've heard. So MuseScore is definitely making a very large bid right now to supplant Sibelius and Finale. I think we talked about this on the news segment that they, this very prominent YouTuber named Tentacruel critiqued them, and they said, "Great!" Like the board's like, "Great, we're gonna hire you to like revamp our entire software." And the big draw of MuseScore is that it's entirely free instead of Sibelius and Finale, where you have to pay a lot of money, either for like a perpetual license or a yearly license. Sibelius, I think, is really good, but it has a steep learning curve. I've never been a huge fan of Finale. It just doesn't feel very fluid or flexible to me. So I think I'd love to. I keep telling myself I need to actually download MuseScore 4 and try it out, see how it compares. But this professional standard in media music is probably still going to be Sibelius and Finale for a while, unless MuseScore 4 really does prove to be, to completely change the market.
Cool, very good. I'll definitely make sure to get that answer to this person specifically. I'm not always good at that, but. I think that was a very comprehensive answer, so that's good. Let's see here. And the last one is my original pick because it was very specific. Let's see. Let's get that loaded in. But basically, it's about medley writing.
Okay, well, I just spent a lot of time on Saturday playing John Williams and Conrad Pope's medley of like the history of American film music. I played it like 50 times at this film conducting institute. So okay, I have some thoughts.
So this one says, ending a medley. Hello all. When arranging a medley of multiple different pieces from a single source, how do you suppose that you would end it? For whatever reason, I always feel compelled to send off the piece with a selection that ties the medley together, or that each individual selection has in common somehow. I'm currently writing a medley of well-known music from Mario Kart, so it's very random, but that's cool.
Okay.
And my natural instinct is to end it with Rainbow Road, and for specific reasons. And also, interesting question: does the study of medley writing exist? And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure I've ever heard of anybody say, "I'm gonna set out, create a college level course in studying medleys." But you are welcome to do it. There are plenty of things out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that would be very revealing if you really sat down to do it, and it would probably be very helpful if you wanted to write something like that. I don't know. I think there are a lot of generic things you can do, just like big chordal ending. Yay, that's kind of so. So, for instance, this medley of I think it's called "A Tribute to the Film Composer," which is like kind of a tour through the history of American film that John Williams and Conrad Pope, who's there, of course, put together. And so we played this, and really, really fantastic. Conrad Pope being there was really cool. Well, how does he end it? It kind of has a chronological flavor to it. Flavor. It kind of takes a chronological. Kind of goes in chronological order. Starting with Citizen Kane, and Corn Gold, Seahawk, and then working its way, to stuff in the 70s and 80s, getting to The Godfather and Rocky, and I try to remember all the things that it gets into. But then it kind of ends. He goes backwards. Then it ends with the main theme from Gone with the Wind. It's a nice, really gigantic, expansive, beautiful melody that So we've kind of we've escaped our chronological progression to kind of take this melody that can kind of just end this collection of American film music, right? And it's kind of it's got that heart-wrenching quality to it, and it has these general characteristics of the Hollywood sound, and it can easily just go into this nice chordal ending, right? And you sustain the chords and big Hollywood timpani roll while everybody's holding out the final chord, and it works that way. But just kind of how it ends and how it can end the piece. So I think there's kind of a conscious we're going to go out of chronological order now to kind of take something that kind of can wrap up all of American film music in a sense. So I don't know, maybe if you feel like Rainbow Road is the epitome, the pinnacle of Mario Kart music, and maybe it is a good way to end it, as long as it has an end. It itself has an end that is pretty conclusive, or you can finesse it into ending as something that's really conclusive.
Yeah, makes complete sense. Cool. Well, hopefully this person makes a nice Mario Kart medley. Yeah, that's all I got. You want to take us out of the whole show, actually? Because
sure,
Nathan will be here.
Yeah, well, thank you for listening and watching. If you're listening or watching live on any of our platforms, or thank you if you are listening or watching us after we release this on all the general podcasting platforms, YouTube, Twitch, lots of different platforms. So yeah, thanks for watching and listening to us. Definitely like and subscribe, or whatever the equivalent of that is, on whatever way you are experiencing this show, and comment. Let us know what you like or didn't like. feel free to join us on our Discord. Hopefully, we'll get some more discussion there going. We kind of had a little bit of a break recently over the holidays, but yeah, and make sure you can find links to all of our stuff. Am I pointing the right way? Is that the right way?
Yes.
Okay, I can't see myself on. So yeah, we have our links to everything down there. You can also check our page out on Locals, where you can support us. I don't know if the sale price is still on.
Oh yes, it is. I forgot. There you go. Ben has saved you.
Yeah, there's a sale price with you can see all the perks for that as well. Our extended holiday sale. Shout out to 909 Crime and Rob Sharma for supporting us over there. And I don't know. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but
I think you got everything.
Okay, well, that's all I can remember. So yeah, once again, thanks for joining us on Mixed Media.
We'll see you next week. Oh, that's the wrong one. Okay, here we go.
Look, tell a man no trouble. I don't want beef, man. I just want vibes. Big man like me, no need for the telephone hype. I got too much getting online. One rule, then dead I'm on site. Wrong move, I bet they gon' ride. No need for the telephone hype, nah. No need for the snoozing. Big whip outside, I'm cruising. Big stick inside, no losing. Better watch out for the snake and Judas is. Don't ask them who this is. I bet they know what I'm moving in. I bet I show it into a dim. How you hate and then lose again? How you hating my vibes? Why you wasting my time?